Hello everybody, how's it going? Awesome Soul here, and welcome back to Robocraft. This time, we will be going over the Aeroflak Sentinel and Power Update patch notes. Now, I don't know if that's the final name for this update. It is a bit of a mouthful, but it's what we got so far, so I'm just gonna go with that. So yes, I will be just covering, I guess, the most interesting points that kind of stand out to me in these patch notes. As always, they are in the description for you to read. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The Aeroflak Sentinel, which is the mini little baby Aeroflak. It has a CPU cost that is exactly half of the Guardian. And they didn't really say the fire rate still, that's kind of missing. Along with health and armor and that sort of stuff. But I guess we'll just have to wait for the update, which should be either pretty soon or out by the time you watch this video. The mass, however, is 1,380, which is below half of the Guardian. So that's going to be interesting balance-wise, because having two of these things is presumably going to have the same-ish fire rate, but you won't lose... It's got more redundancy, basically. So if you lose one, you still have some fire rate, whereas with one Aeroflak, you lost all of your fire rate. So it's going to be interesting how they balance this thing otherwise, like with health and that sort of stuff. Now, the CPU to power system. This was detailed a little bit more than we had previously. So players with more CPU in the robot will have higher power, and those with less CPU will have less power. So if you are at around 1125 CPU, you won't see a difference in your power. If you are at the high end of the spectrum, you will see an increase of 25%, and if you are at the low end of the spectrum, you will see a power decrease of 25%. So it's either a gain or a drop, essentially. So there is a 50% difference from the top to the bottom. Although, however, the power you gain is actually still the same. So it's always going to take 10 seconds to recharge you. So not only is your power pool increasing, but your power regeneration is also going up as well. And the same thing works with the power booster. So no matter which level of CPU to power ratio you are at, you will only be getting an 8-second regeneration bonus instead of the 10-second usual that it is. And now rotors are finally getting camera steering. So this is actually kind of interesting because they also say that if you use your mouse, you can tilt up and down. I assume what they mean by this is you're not going to be doing like backflips or somersaults anytime soon, but it's just going to help you slightly nose down or nose up to aim a little bit better. That's what I assume anyway. Hopefully it's not too bad, because one of my helicopters might have trouble if it's tilting downward if I'm trying to aim at a ground unit. Oh well. Now, moving on, balance-wise, we have the Aeroflak explosion radius has actually been reduced by 15%. Now, it's not the trigger radius, it doesn't seem. It is just the explosion radius. So what does that mean? Well, basically anything sort of near it won't really take as much damage as easily. Although 15% reduction is decent, but it's not massive. Although this next thing kind of plays into that as well. So they increased the height a robot needs to be away from the ground for Aeroflak to trigger against it. Most hovers should find that they are not triggering flak anymore, though mega hovers may still do so at max height. So that's also another nerf to Aeroflak. So now it is completely, and rather unfortunately, a solely anti-air weapon. It has no other really viable purposes anymore other than just being an anti-air weapon. And I mean, that's what it's designed for, but you know, it was kind of cool to be like, oh, can I shoot that target? Yeah, I think I can. Let me aim for that hover, and yes, cool, I'm dealing a whole bunch of damage to his allies because this guy is hovering way too high. Or, you know, I guess it can still do some good work against Max when they jump. But, it's definitely not going to be as effective against ground units anymore, even though it was pretty specialized in which ground units it could take out. Anyways, the laser projectile speed has been increased by 100%. So now it's only half the speed of a railgun instead of a quarter of the speed of a railgun. So that's gonna be fairly interesting. It seems like SMGs are getting quite a big buff for this update. And for those of you complaining about the laser camera shake, I believe it was toned down from when those initial complaints happened, but now they've toned it down even more. So, pretty much unnoticeable. Eventually. They're just probably going to remove it. I doubt that, but you know. We'll see. And also, the laser projectile spread has actually been reduced as well, so now it has a tighter firing cone. The laser attack rate and DPS has been increased, but damage per shot has been decreased, although this is a net buff, which should make lasers more powerful while also making them feel more satisfying to use. Hopefully they're right, because I haven't really used lasers in a long time. And, well, one, they were never really my kind of weapon, I just generally prefer the other weapons. But recently they have been fairly weak. They were sort of meant as a backup weapon, essentially, because of their lower power usage than everything else, pretty much. So now we might see more of a spotlight put on laser builds. Now, this one is a little controversial, although not hugely. It's just I've seen a few people, or like one or two people, bring this up. So I don't know if other people have talked about it, but here it goes. So, components no longer need to be destroyed to deal damage to a robot. So the example they give is a 98 CPU mech leg that has lost half of its armor will now be considered 49 CPU of its quote-unquote health remaining to your health bar. This means that defensive stacking with high-cost components will not be quite as effective. So when it comes to the mech spam leg rail abominations, this might be a fix to it. I don't think it's going to be incredibly potent, I guess. I think this was designed to sort of get rid of those kind of builds, the leg spam builds. But I think in the end, it's really only gonna hurt mechs, like actual mechs, and tanks even more. And tanks definitely needed some help, but this one, not gonna help it too much. But then again, we haven't really seen too many of the big, massive tank track bots. There seems to be a lot of the smaller tracks nowadays. I guess that's not really a good thing, though. They definitely do need to give the bigger tracks a bit of a buff, if that's the case. People aren't really using them. So all game modes are now unlocked at level 5, which is quite nice. The front-facing laser has a turning arc of 180 degrees now, as opposed to whatever the old one was. I haven't touched that thing in like a year and a half, as I'm sure many people have, so I don't really know the old turning arc off the top of my head. They have improved camera controls for hovers when they are upside down. They're no longer less jittery. The nominal counts are now referred to as max in the tooltip, and the reason for that is that max weapon count no longer has a slight benefit for going beyond them. Once you have as many weapons as a particular max states, any more is purely redundancy. So having more over 6, for example, isn't going to give you a slight boost. It's just going to stay at that fire rate, and no matter how many more you stack on, it's not going to get any faster. They've added a LOD mesh, not entirely sure what that is, but they say that it's going to improve the frame rate, so it definitely is a good thing, whatever that means. Anybody who knows what an LOD is, let me know down below. Now, this is something that is a massive... No, I'm just kidding. It's the Protoseeker being moved in the inventory. Because oddly enough, it was all the way at the very beginning, which I assume was an artifact of them planning the Protoseeker to be the quote-unquote noob weapon. So it would make sense that a noob weapon would be in the first slot. But I'm sure you know all about the problems with Protoseekers currently, so I won't go into that. But yes, it makes sense why it's moved now. And that pretty much covers everything. There are a few things that I haven't talked about. The fixes, mainly. So if you want to read about what bugs have been fixed, link is in the description for that, as it always is. Anyways, let me know down below what you guys think of everything. Are you looking forward to the flak now that we have, I guess, a few of its stats? Not really the full stats. Well, only time will tell what we will get out of this mini flak. Will it be as powerful as the big flak, or is it kind of gonna get the same treatment as the mini ion and be kind of lackluster? But not insanely underpowered, just kind of not as good. Anyways, again, opinions on everything down below. Let me know, get a conversation going. With that, guys, I've been the Awesome Soul. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now. This is cancer. This is so much cancer that I can feel the tumors growing on my back. And it's way down heavy on me, and it's not okay.